Welcome back to the show, everyone. Buying a home for most people will be the largest purchase they will ever make. And even though we say do not look at your home as an investment, you should be looking at it as a utility for you and your family. The truth of the matter is a person's home becomes the largest source of their net worth over decades, at least historically speaking.
Yeah, not in the last couple of years for sure. The unprecedented rise of home values in the last, call it 5 or 6 years, has really been shocking. And it's not normal. And a lot of people who live through both owning a home and aspiring to own a home, I don't think they really have an appreciation for how rare of an anomaly that type of home price appreciation is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, and our boy Christopher Nahibi was quoted in an article today that really inspired this segment of the show. And we thought maybe it'd be valuable to bring to the listeners here. And we want to get into the value of a home and what it's influenced by, the number of different things.
Yeah. Also, full disclosure, I did not even remember giving this interview. When it came out, I was like, what?
Yeah, it's good though.
I had to go back and see it. I didn't read it.
Yeah.
I had to go back and see, like, oh, yeah, what? This is only a single quote. I think she cut out most of what I said. But so this came up because they were looking to somebody to kind of talk to them about a broker's price opinion, which we'll get into in a little bit. But it's obviously not what an appraised value is. But I went off on this, like, wider diatribe on, like, all the different sources and places that people find to look for their value in their home and what is and is not a good proxy for how much your home is worth.
Right.
So, and you and I talking today, we thought, okay, number one, it was either this or life insurance.
Yeah, and I know you felt like that wouldn't reach enough people.
That wasn't true. I didn't feel like it was. My subject matter expertise on insurance is not as deep as all the rest of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel 100% comfortable talking about it without a little more prep time.
That's okay. That's valid. Maybe we can get into it next week. But the reason why I thought it was so good because I know that you did get life insurance and you went through that experience.
Oh yeah, I've got a whole life. I've got term. I got both.
Right? You got both. See,
Yeah.
and I felt like that would have been a valuable conversation to have because I think that's a topic that a lot of people maybe put off to the side, and they should know that as time goes on, it just becomes more and more expensive for you. So it'd be more beneficial to get into it earlier.
Yeah, well, and that was the reason why I did it. Plus, I mean, I knew my wife and I were going to have a son. We'd planned on it. We were kind of being thoughtful and pragmatic about it in advance. So I did it all ahead of time, knowing that I just wanted to set it up, have a bill come once a year. I think my bill comes in September or something like that, and just have it pay.
Okay. So maybe that's a nice little teaser for episode 229. But for this episode, let's get into the some of the things that influence the value of homes. So this, I mean, will really impact you whether you're selling or maybe looking to refinance if you purchased recently and you're hoping that rates come down in 2025, right? You ain't coming down this year, Chief.
Unless you live in Austin, in which case, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Or if you're even looking to buy, some of this will also impact you too. If you're even going to look at homes and things that you can look out for on, why is this home priced differently than the one down the street that I also just looked at?
Okay, so let's have a broad conversation about home valuation. It's going to wind up being not as simple as you think. All right, so we're going to talk about the best ways for you to approximate the value of your home. We're going to talk about what your bank does to approximate the value of your home. And we're going to talk about some of the more refined guidelines that govern how an actual appraisal is done. So you understand some of the technical nuances and why what you see on Zillow and Redfin might not be something you unilaterally want to rely on because it could be very different than the truth.
Absolutely.
So I think the best way to start this conversation is by saying, look, whether you aspire to own a home or you currently own one, looking on Zillow, looking on Redfin, looking on these data aggregators on the internet is a pretty guilty pleasure for a lot of people.
Right.
Right?
Especially with HGTV, like really popping off the last few years with all these like house flipping shows or love it or list it shows, right?
Or everybody on social media telling you can flip homes, you can buy homes, people looking for deals. There's a lot of different reasons why people go on these platforms and they rely on them. The first thing I will tell you straight out the gate is you will find that homogeneity or consistency or similarly situated properties typically work better for this. So a great example here, if your home is on a tract, it's a tract home, meaning that a builder made several homes in the same space. If that is where your property is located and it's very, very similar to the surrounding homes, then guess what? It's going to be a better approximation if you go to one of these websites of the value.
Right.
But it won't be perfect. And the reason why is each home is unique. And Saied has some unique details here to go over. Why don't you run through those real quick and I'll
Yeah.
explain them.
Some of the key points that the article really dives into, and maybe we'll add in a few more as we get into it. But number one, as everyone always hears, location, location, location. That's obviously plays a big role. We're talking about, school districts, proximity to, parks and hospitals, or maybe the ocean, right? You're looking at the sizes of the home, like bedrooms, square footage, the condition of the home, how old it is, how new it is, and some of the market trends.
So the algorithm on these websites tries to take all of that into account and say, okay, this one's got more square footage, so it should be worth a little bit more. This one has a pool, so it should be worth a little bit more. And it's trying to approximate similarly situated properties in the area. The problem is that these websites typically don't understand if this is a tract home or not. And it doesn't understand that this neighborhood, which is directly adjacent from another neighborhood, might have very different homes.
Right.
It's looking almost at pure data. And obviously over time, this will get better. But for the purposes of appraising property, these unique nuances of the market can very much have a different result in the value of the home.
Absolutely. And speaking from experience here, the first home that my wife and we purchased, and we ultimately decided to list it, these websites, as in Zillow and Redfin, the second we listed it at our list price, they increased the estimated value, right? This because they believe that, whoever's listing it, they probably know the area better. Or I don't know if it favors them in one way or the other.
Which makes sense in a value appreciating economy where home prices are rising. If you list your house for a little bit more than the last home that was similar to yours sold for, then the algorithm would go, okay, you know what, maybe home values have gone up since then.
Yes.
Or maybe this home is worth a little bit more, and it's a little bit more leeway, and it's justifiable, if you will. But in a value depreciating market, which we're not currently in, except for some markets, outliers like Austin, you look at that and you go, okay, wait a minute, why is that happening? Is the algorithm catering to this? And there's a reason why it would. If a real estate professional is listing this property and all of these aggregators are pulling data from the local MLS, multiple listing services. So by way of backstory, if you're a licensed member of a National Association of Realtors, right, you belong to a local MLS, a multiple listing system. And they basically, this is the real value of having a realtor, other than them giving you direction and guidance on buying a home, is they have access to MLS. This MLS is basically a private closed-in Zillow and Redfin with more data for them, but that's where everybody lists their properties to buy, to sell, and most people to rent. That data gets pushed out to those websites, and that's what you see whenever you go there. So Zillow and Redfin make money selling this data to realtors in the area of people who are searching on those websites for properties. And those realtors will call you and say, hey, I have access to these properties. Let's go look at them.
The leads that they send out, right?
They sell the leads to realtors. That's how they make the bulk of their money, really. And there's some other side ventures that they're into, but that's what they do. So they are catering to real estate professionals by selling the leads, people like you searching on those sites for properties. And you'll see it in the right-hand column whenever you go to these properties. All the realtors in the local area comes up. They pay a lot of money to have their face next to those properties on those pages when you search them. And they actually sell them to them by zip code. So whenever one of these realtors lists a property, they want to be as amenable to them listing a property as possible. So obviously those values creep up with whatever their list price is. They're not going to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. This Saied Omar realtor listed this property for $1 million, but we think it's worth $800. We're going to show the value as $800 on Zillow and Redfin.
Exactly.
So you'll find that active listings almost always, unless something has gone really, way off kilter, are going to reflect the listing price on these websites. And that's where is that going to affect other properties that are now listed for sale? Is that going to affect whenever you go Google and search whenever you go to these sites and you search the value of your home?
Right.
Is that going to affect what your home's indicated value is? So this is where the unreliability of the platform really kicks in. You have to take it with a grain of salt and be thoughtful. There are a couple other programs you're probably not aware of that are out there, and most people who are not a real estate professional probably wouldn't have access to them. But there's things like, I believe one of the apps is called PRP, not to be confused with the blood treatment, but basically you can go in and you can order a report, and it'll give you a ton of data from the local MLS in a consolidated report and actually give you an approximation of its value.
Right, and sometimes you might get lucky that some of the properties that the PRP brings up will actually end up being the comps that will show up on the appraisal.
Just waiting for you to say the buzzword, comp.
Comp.
So Jamil Damji, as much as I love him but have had a bit of a falling out with him, he does a really, really, really good job explaining what how to pull comparable properties to a property, come up with its value. And for people who are in the wholesale business and real estate, knowing what the market value, being able to pull what comparable properties are in the market to get an indication of value is really, really important to what they do. Because if I'm going to buy a property from you, Saied, under market, let's say at $500,000, but I've pulled comparable properties and I'm very confident that it'll be worth $700,000 fully renovated. Right. Then I know that that's a decent deal for me to buy, so long as the repair cost is below $200,000.
Exactly.
You're gonna make some money.
Exactly.
And essentially, that's how wholesalers really come down to being good at their job. They'll sell the contract to somebody for $10,000. They'll have the deal structured as like, hey, you need this much money to buy it. This is how much it needs in repairs, and this is what your value is. This is your valuation that I came up with based on the comparable properties in the area.
Right, and this is the asset that they have. This is what they can bring to the table, right? That normal everyday folks they can't pull this information. They have to wait for an appraisal to be done in order.
Ah, man.
And how much are appraisals?
Fire segue.
Yeah, it was fire. But
Yeah.
how much do appraisals go if somebody wanted to even do this themselves? Like there's a reason why people don't just go and just get appraisals done, right?
So you don't want to get an appraisal on your house and expect the bank to use it. And the reason why is the bank needs to hire their own neutral third-party appraiser who doesn't have any unfair bias towards the person ordering it. For example, if you're ordering it and you're paying them directly, then they know you, they may have a rapport with you, they might have a relationship. So because of that, most larger lenders like banks will use something called an AMC, but basically it's a third-party service who they reach out to and say, hey, I need an appraisal of Saeed's property here. That AMC will then engage an appraiser. So there's no connection between the appraiser and the bank. There's a neutral third-party company in between. There's no connection between you, the end client who's benefiting from the loan, and the bank and the appraiser. It's all independent. So these AMCs came up as largely in response to the Dodd-Frank Reform Act after the Great Recession, but suffice it to say that was put in place to kind of create this neutral third-party barrier between any undue influence in valuations.
Got it.
Because it'd be really easy to be like, hey, man, hey, I need you to pimp my value up. You know what I mean?
just love it. You like steak dinners?
I need you to do whatever Kim Kardashian did to her butt to this house value, okay? But you can tell everybody it's natural.
Yeah.
You got to do that.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's worthwhile to go down the path of the approaches to value. And Haroon, if you could do me a favor and search USPAP. I always screw this up whenever I explain this acronym.
Okay.
But so while he's doing that,
United States practical what is it?
USPAP.
Yeah, that ain't it.
No, USPAP appraisals. Put my glasses on here.
There you go.
There you go. So, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. There it is. Haroon?
Well done, my friend.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Are you watching the game back there?
No, our team got knocked out last night.
Your team. Don't say our team.
No,
Our team. Who's your team?
Our team. He's
my team is me.
no. You're a Thunder guy.
It used to be
Now's a good time.
when
by
Kevin
the way.
Durant was there.
Now's a very good time.
Is it really? Are they,
Yeah.
are they in the playoffs?
Yeah, they're the number 1 seed.
Are they really? Wow. Who's
Yeah.
their team?
That's the best part. Nobody knows.
No. Well, there you go. Fun fact.
Yeah.
All right. So USPAP, okay, governs all the rules around appraisals. And not just appraisals for single-family residences, for homes, for townhomes, for condos, but appraisals for all property, right? Commercial real estate, multifamily real estate, all there.
Single
okay?
family, right?
Single family, yeah, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So this sets in guidelines. I'm going to summarize this really in a very simple way. I'm making a very complex thing very simple, and some appraisers who are listening to this are probably going to kick me right in the ding-ding for it. But basically, it sets a standardized way of looking at properties. But in order to become an appraiser, you actually have to take a number of tests, but you have to have an apprenticeship. You can't just go pass some tests and become one.
I love this about this, by the way.
I do too. And it's a lot of hours. I want to say it's like 2,000 hours. It's been a long time since I looked at the hours, but it's a lot of work to become this. And if you want to become something known as an MAI appraiser in order to do like commercial real estate, it's an even longer apprenticeship.
Got it.
And it's in that niche. It's in that specific niche. So if you're getting an appraiser, you're getting somebody who's done the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you have to fill in hours. It's similar to being a contractor in some ways, except for contractors, frankly, there's more loopholes than there are for appraisers. So the USPAP is basically
no different. Also, it just made me think of this too, right? Even if you want to become a doctor, right, you got to go through residency.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like this is the right way.
You know what's stunning to me? Lawyers don't have this requirement.
That's what I was. Why? Why not?
It's so stupid.
I mean, there is a loophole around, right? going to law school.
Only for going to law school, but not actually for the practice of law. They're actually talking about getting rid of the bar in some circumstances, and I think this has actually got some benefit to keeping the bar and doing this as well. But basically, getting rid of the bar and saying you have to work as an apprentice underneath an attorney for 2 years that you're not related to. I think that's got some value.
I agree.
But with that comes all sorts of alternatives. Effectively, this is so for the realtors out there. USPAP is effectively the trade group that appraisers belong to.
Mm-hmm.
And appraisers who are often brokers and realtors themselves because it gives them access to properties directly if they wanted to go, or they get access directly by being an appraiser and going to the trade groups themselves. They have to abide by the same rules and guidelines for all of their appraisers for appraising property. And for when it comes to homes that you live in, single-family residences, condos, townhomes, whatever you want to call it, they typically appraise a couple different approaches to value, but two are probably the most notable, and there's a third one we'll talk about in a second, okay? The first one is your comparable sales approach. Similarly situated properties to yours that are sold in the area, that are currently actively listed in the area, right? Those are going to be your best possible indicators of value for your property. And the more recent a property sold, the more similar it is to your property, the better of an indicator of value that it is. That is a comparable property used by the appraiser to determine your value. They're not going to just use one. They're typically going to use at least 3, if not up to 6 or possibly even more. So what they're going to do is they're going to take 3 homes. Hopefully you get 3 that have recently sold in your area. Maybe an active listing is a fourth one that's listed for sale. You say, well, Chris, why do you want a listed home versus ones that have recently sold? Well, maybe the active listing is more similar to your property, but it hasn't sold yet. So you don't know if that value that it's listed for is actually what it's going to sell for.
Right. And something like there could be some telling information. What if it's very similar to your property and it's now been sitting at the current price point that it's listed at, and it's been sitting on the market for 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, right? Now you can start to tell maybe there's some issues here with the listing price. And back to your previous point on if the home that you're living in or you're selling or listing or you're looking to buy is a tract home, right? The comparables are going to be pretty close and in line with your property.
Because they're all built the same way. They all have the relative structure and size. And keep in mind, usually in tract homes, they have 1 or 2 different design aesthetics, maybe some builder upgrades. And by just kind of a general rule, I know you think like your remodeled kitchen is going to add a ton of value. It really doesn't for appraisal purposes. It might for listing the property and somebody's willingness to pay more for it. Now, things like having a pool or not having a pool, those make a big difference. Having more square footage and less square footage, those make a difference. Having more bedrooms, those make a difference.
Make a difference, right. I actually went through this. So back to my previous example earlier, the first home that we had that we sold, my wife and I, we actually made some significant changes in the house that we thought should have given us more value,
like
right?
What? Name some of them.
Like we completely redid the backyard, right? I mean, we poured concrete. We had planters put in. Anyone that's redone the backyard, building planters is...
Hardscape and landscape is wildly expensive on some circumstances.
Built-in barbecue, right? And we also redid a lot of things in the kitchen, okay? But given that the home, by the time we were selling it, had only been, I think, 5 years, 6 years old, the appraiser came in and said, it's a newer home. How much more could you have really increased the value? So
and that's a fair statement. I know it's hard to hear that when you're the homeowner.
It was a tough blow,
yeah.
Right? You're like, man, I was expecting, because I think they cut it like $30,000 from our list price.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, man, that was a tough blow and a tough pill to swallow. But, I mean.
But you can swallow it.
It was a tough blow.
So, when you look at these, I'm going to get back to this type of evaluation process, but I think it's important to go through the other two just for perspective as we go through the steps here. The second most common approach to value for homes is your insurable replacement cost new. They're going to use something called Marshall and Swift to come up with, if this home were destroyed, what would it cost to rebuild the home? And this is important for somebody giving you a loan because it's going to tell them how much they can require for you to get in homeowners insurance, hazard insurance. In states like California, not all states like this, but I believe the majority of them, and most banks underwrite this way, and lenders, they're going to make you get the lower of replacement costs new as determined by the appraiser or your loan amount.
Mm-hmm.
So in worst case event scenario, your home is totally destroyed. They can get covered for the loan they've given you, or you can rebuild the home to its current as is structure.
Yes. But I've been noticing personally on some of the appraisals that I've been looking at, these Marshall and Swift insurable value numbers, they feel a little light.
Because they are. Because at inflation kick in, right? And Marshall and Swift and these numbers are basically looking at, how much would lumber cost? How much would labor cost? These things have all gone up pretty dramatically in price in the last couple of years, and it's really difficult for that guide to keep a consistent cadence.
Yes.
So, and it's Marshall and Swift and replacement cost new is actually kind of a really, if you've seen the calculation for it in an appraisal, it's really based off square footage. It's not very detailed.
No, it's not. Exactly. But, I mean, so to your point earlier, we talked about how an appraiser looks at, comparable sales, right? That's the sales approach or the market approach, right? The other approach to that is now also the income approach.
And that's the third one that it's not really as relevant for. If you're buying a home to live in it, this will probably not be done.
Right.
If you're buying a home that's a rental property, this will probably be done. And one of the things I always tell people is if you're going to buy a home as a rental property, if you can ask your lender, if you've disclosed to them it's going to be rental property and you're not doing like, oh, I'm going to live there, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Getting this, to me, has value because it tells you what similarly situated properties rent for in the area. And you'll know whether your planned rent for this property makes sense based on an appraiser's outside neutral third-party perspective. Now, it's not going to tell you what a vacation rental, does.
Right.
It's not going to tell you what, these seasonal rentals do. But if you want to rent out your property long-term, like I typically do, like I get it, I rent it out for a year or two at a time. Okay, it's going to tell you what your current market valuation is, so you don't have to guess that number.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you get a second opinion or a second appraisal?
So, good question. And the answer is typically no if you're getting a loan from somebody, right? Unless there's a material deficiency. And most people will go, hey, man, my home's worth $1 million. Why does this say it's worth $450,000?
Yeah.
That's some bullshit, man.
That's some goddamn bullshit.
Yeah, you don't understand. There's a camel in the back.
Yeah, so to the listeners out there that maybe haven't gone through this process yet, the way this works, and this can actually be a huge, point of conflict for the buyer and the seller, is when the buyer is looking to make an offer on the home and they make their offer, their lender is the one that's appraising the home, right? So if the value comes in low, you can see how the seller could get really upset or offended.
Yeah.
And maybe want to walk
away. Came in, he was going to pay $800,000 for this. Why are you saying it's worth $750,000?
Yeah, and now Said's coming in saying, hey, man, I know I offered $800,000, but my bank's saying it's only worth $750,000. I'm going to drop my offer to $750,000.
So it's worthwhile to note as well that whenever you have a purchase contract, one of the standard provisions in there is it's subject to the appraised value coming in at the purchase price.
Right.
So which means if it doesn't come in at that, one or either side can blow up the deal because it was contingent upon that occurrence. Now, what typically happens in a market like this where supply is so limited is Saied comes back to the table and is like, hey, man, I would like to reduce the value to the appraised value. And the seller in a market like this where there's such a limited supply says, fuck you, buy it, or somebody else in one of my backup offers is going to buy it.
Yeah, but that's a very dangerous game, right? Especially in this market, right? Also because there's not a lot of buyers out there that can afford, right? And let's say you do walk away, right? Let's say the seller does walk away. You're now playing this game where you got to, as a seller, explain to the next buyer why I had your property fall out of escrow, because that's a bad look.
Exactly. And this is the, oh God, I don't want to say it this way because it's going to sound, this is the intrinsic value that most realtors will tell you that they bring to the table. They're going to say, hey, look, I've gone through this a million times. I can negotiate this for you. This is my skill set, baby.
This is what I do.
This is why you pay me.
Yeah.
There's always hiccups in real estate. I'm here to handle the hiccups.
Okay, there
I'm
you
gonna
go.
put you on my knee. I'm gonna burp you.
Yeah, you're pulling out your Harvey Specter.
Is that a Harvey Specter thing?
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. Who's that?
What? Come on, man.
Who's Harvey Specter?
Odin?
Of course he knows who it is.
He knows who he is,
No,
bro.
I don't know
I've
who that
literally heard you steal lines and act like I don't know who that is.
I don't know who this is.
He's the main actor on that show, Suits.
I never saw the show.
Come on, dog.
I never once saw the show. I think you guys thought because I wore suits all the time that I watched the fucking show. Never seen the show.